This is John from AllpointsTV, and today I have the distinct pleasure of sitting down and on the phone talking to Pastor Carson, but he goes by Pastor Dan Lauffer. He's a candidate for the Michigan City District for the state representative slot. Who's currently holding that, by the way?
Kathy Crawford?
Kathy Crawford. Okay, so anyway, Dan's an interesting person. I believe this is your first foray into politics. Am I correct?
Well, I did it 2 years ago and came closer than anyone expected to winning the primary. This is a Republican area, so it's important to win the primary.
So you're facing Crawford as a Democrat or Republican as well.
No, the Republican.
Okay, so
Yes, her husband had it, and he fulfilled his 6 years, and then he passed it on to his wife, and they're very popular in Novi. But we really need a more active representative in this district.
So anyway, let's go through a little bit about you, and I got some notes that you and I have covered, I think, before. Pastor Dan he has a BA degree from Olivet Nazarene University, an MA from Northwestern University, and a master's, I guess it's in divinity, right, from Garrett Evangelical Seminary. Where's that at, by the way, Dan?
Yes, those are in Evanston, Illinois.
Okay. You also did postgraduate studies at Northwestern, Oxford, and Glasgow universities. Those are all pretty impressive, very impressive universities.
They were a lot of fun and a lot of hard work.
And you were a Methodist minister for 27 years and a university professor for 15. Where did you teach at?
Well, I taught at Kendall College, and then while I was in graduate school, and then after I retired from the early retirement from the ministry, I taught at the University of St. Francis and also part-time at Joliet Community College.
So that's a good thing to have. I think education like that, being an educational background, a lot of them were and that's surprising too, because you were amongst the educated class of people. They have a tendency more on the liberal side, and I worked at the University of Michigan, also worked at Mott Community College for a couple of years there, but also worked on and off for a better part of 15 at U of M. And so it's kind of a really oddball thing to find somebody who was from that background, had been an academic, who also has a conservative, understanding of life, So I mean, that's very refreshing, I think.
Well, most of my education was in private schools. Olivet Nazarene University was the undergraduate, of course, Nazarene, and then at Garrett Methodist. Northwestern was a private school. I had to fight my way through Joliet. It was actually Joliet Junior College. I call it community, but it's junior college. First in the nation, but I had to fight my way. That's where I had the biggest fights, believe it or not. Community college, you wouldn't think so, but they didn't like. One of the things that I taught at Joliet Junior College was comparative religions, and you wouldn't think that Christianity would be so hard to teach. I taught all the religions, all the major religions of the world, and it was easy peasy until I got to Christianity. And then I had increasing opposition. They didn't like Christianity. They thought we were bullies. Many of them did, I should say. But it seemed like a growing number. And then I'd get reported to the dean's office because I was a Christian. And of course, most of that was just poo-pooed. But I did have to meet with the dean a few times, nevertheless, simply because I was a Christian.
Yeah, it's like I think that's absurd. I mean, it's almost like the Christians have to be on the defensive in this country, and also, they're occupying territory. It's almost like they're coming across as to other peoples, they're coming across as being, invaders, which is, you've always been here. You've always been here. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So anyway, you are a conservative, though. I mean, I've looked at your track, what your
Yes.
intended objectives are, and you're very, very conservative. First of all, before we go into the reason why you want to do what you want to do or what you want to do, what prompted you to actually get into this race?
First of all, I was invited to do so, but secondly, my calling for most of my life was public speaking, leading people, helping people, pulling my load and helping people. In all sorts of ways. I really enjoyed the pastoral ministry, but my calling seemed to have shifted once I retired from full-time ministry. It's now I consider God as being the authority over both the political and the religious realm, and so it's a natural between the two that I moved from serving people in the religious realm to serving people in the political realm.
So that's a good fit, I think, too. And you got principles. I mean, that's like, that's what that to me indicates. I don't have this. I get really tired of people talking about the Catholic priests who've been, child molesters, and they always try to depict every Christian some kind of some scumbag who just tries to use religion as a shield to actually not get detected. I'm very wary of seeing that as a constant motif on movies and TV shows. It's not entirely accurate. If you were to do that to any other group out there, you'd be considered a racist or a bigot. But they consider that themselves exposing this awful secret.
Well, that's exactly true. They hark back to the Inquisition, which is simply an inquiry, and it wasn't intended. The Catholic Church never killed anybody, never burned anybody or anything else. They simply tried to help people come to a point of confession in their lives and see and understand what Christianity was about. And then they attack us for picking on the poor Muslims who were just innocent bystanders, and we went to the Middle East and attacked them. The truth of the matter was, for over 400 years, Islam had been slaughtering Christians, forcing conversions, or killing Christians and Jews, for that matter, and Hindus when they went to India, in order to force conversion. They've been doing that for 400 plus years, and they'd even gone in, tried to move into Europe. They were stopped several times, but tried to move into Europe, and finally, the Eastern Emperor begged the Western powers, and the Pope was the unifying factor in the West, to send troops, and so Europe did. Christian Europe did.
So that's been one of the most grossly misrepresented, eras of history. I mean, and it seems like they go through great lengths of trying to beat up on the West. The Western people themselves, who enjoy the benefits of the West, want to denigrate the West. I mean, I think it's absurd.
Exactly.
I think it's just like, okay, even if there were some atrocities committed, I don't know a group of people who hasn't committed atrocities, but I mean, to keep on going back and to pull that up as like a weapon and try to beat up people in the current era, I think is just ridiculous. It's absurd. I mean, married couples have problems when they do that. Why can't we recognize that's not a good tactic to take for all societies, but they just continuously do that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
But anyway, yeah, you got some very. I mean, what you just stated is considered, like a very, definite, decisive, political stance for a conservative, because those issues that you just addressed, the historical perspective thing, that's a big thing on the radar of academics, liberals, and secularists. And that's actually putting a flag on you right there, what you just stated. So I mean, that's a gutsy statement right there. It's a series of statements. So
Yes.
So anyway, but you see a real need for change down there where you're at, because what you sounds like this woman inherited her husband's office, and that's happened several times in Michigan. Yeah, I mean, I think we got like the legacy families here galore. And we have the Kildys. One, the uncle retired, and the other one, his nephew took over. And I'm not trashing them. I really don't care for the Kildys' track record voting, but I mean, they're not horrific people. But I mean, the Dingles are. I mean, my God, that family's been. It's going to be close to 100 years. By the time this wraps up, it's going to be close to 100 years. I mean, old man Dingles, the old man was in power during the FDR administration. Then his sons took over in the 50s and ran it till just recently. And then his wife got elected. I mean, and then they wonder why. Okay, well, how can you promise change and you got the same people and the same minds running it? I don't understand that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, the Democrats are old hands at it. Why should we repeat it in the Republican Party? I mean, there are Republicans who've done this sort of thing. In fact, the Crawfords are an example of it. But why would we want to ape what the Democrats are doing? Well, anyway, it is time for a change, and I hope to bring it.
No, anyway, you got some real bulleted things here. I mean, really, actually, they would probably draw a lot of attention. I mean, you got some serious stuff that I think some people would consider really ambitious for being involved in a state, the state legislature for that district. You want to see the repeal of Obamacare in Michigan, which is, that's a hot topic. I mean, some people think they're going around bragging how successful it was, and the numbers aren't in yet that I've seen that actually indicates that. I mean, and that's all actually added cost. That's demonstrated very clearly, and it just seems like they're totally oblivious to that.
And it really hurts business in this state. This is one of the reasons. One of the reasons again. One of the secondary reasons that I want to get involved in politics. Business is really being hurt and continuing to be hurt all over the nation, but specifically in Michigan. We had so many failed businesses, or for that matter, businesses that operated quite well until they were burdened with this extra Obamacare cost that we allowed in. The state of Michigan allowed in. They should not have done that. We agreed to paying this extra fee for Medicaid. And it's going to increase. Next year it's going to double from what it was this year. How in the world are we supposed to do all the other things that we're supposed to do? Now, to get back to the businessman himself, they've been forced to many of them have been forced to turn from full-time to part-time just to get out from underneath that burden. And then you add on the push towards a minimum wage, which no government should ever force upon business. The market should determine minimum wage, but they're trying to force it on to the businesses, and all it does is just make businesses turn to machines to replace the people. How does that help anything? And for that matter, what about the teenagers? Very few teenagers have any jobs at all because the cost of doing business has been increased by Obamacare and the minimum wage push and all these other things. We need to put a stop to it. Let the free market run these things. Listen, nobody can survive on $2 or $3 an hour wages. So the market's going to force businesses to pay a higher wage, and of course, consequently, we'll be paying more for our goods, and that's the way the market works. Let it work.
We'll use that statement there to segue into a bit too, not too far off course here, but I mean, what would you do in your position if you get elected as state rep to encourage creation of businesses here in Michigan, businesses, and maybe how would you go about doing that?
Well, that segues into a number of other issues too. One I would look to making sure that the Common Core is blocked in Michigan, because Common Core deals with so many abstractions that it can't get down to really adding numbers. You've seen the crazy math examples perhaps on Facebook, and I know what they're trying to do, but what happens is that students don't learn the multiplication table. They learn these abstractions that don't make a lot of sense, and so they're not prepared. What we need is not only to block Common Core, but we need to bring back trade schools or vocational training for our students. Our businesses aren't based upon whether or not a student can quote Elizabeth Barrett Browning or Shakespeare, for that matter, or understand it deeply. And I love poetry. I have a whole shelf full of poetry, but that is not the basis for a business. For that matter, most students are more interested, or many students anyway, are more interested in being creative with their hands. Why? It's not been that many years ago that we had consortiums of high schools that would train students in mechanical engineering and auto mechanics and all sorts of other things as an adjunct. Every student should have some basic academic understanding through high school, but many students should be able to go through a vocational track or a trade school track. Why can't we work with small businesses to train our students and give them high school credit for doing so, even junior high school credit in some cases? But why can't we do that? Why can't we get back to something we used to do, and it helped our economy to really boom? Get Obamacare off small businessmen's back or corporations' backs. Get train students in trades and let them flourish instead of getting angry and sitting in classrooms and forced to learn things that they know aren't going to do them any good. But train them in things that'll help our business climate. Well, anyway.
Yeah, so because no, I think those are pretty. That's far-reaching. I mean, that's like something really ambitious. Because most of the times, most politicians are always like my friend, who is he does interviews with politicians. He said the only thing they can offer business people is to tweak the tax, the tax code. Let's tweak this. That's the only tool they have in the toolbox. And yours is a little bit further reaching, but I think it's actually more. It's on target. What I've always thought. I worked around colleges. And I've been, I had 3 majors in college, so basically I was a liberal arts major, a perpetual student in some people's eyes. But I realized my family came from a business background. They were all business people, and
yes.
and they had bars, they had restaurants. My mom's family had a grocery store, and I saw that there was an intelligence that the people they had that the people who were in academic settings simply didn't have, and there was just a simple common sense. And
exactly.
I think there's nothing wrong. You and I are kind of similar in that way. We dealt with the world of ideas and tradition and history, and we have a love for that. But I mean, it's got to be brought into the future. Where do you actually are applying that? Where the rubber meets the road at? And there's simply that's where we're failing our students. And that's one of the more. It's a tangible thing, but it's only tangible down the road when people see everything coalesce. When everybody sees how it fits together, the bigger picture fits together. It's not the immediate, but it's a longer term thing. So it's more. I think it's got more. You have to be more present to see that, and that's the only way you develop that.
That's right.
But anyway, you got a lot of points that you really want to change. You already addressed the about the minimum wage, and I agree. I mean, I think that I have a friend who's in the financial world, and he says he's for basically unlimited immigration, but he also says just cut back on what you can or stop entirely. These people, new arrivals, can get, they have to have sponsors. They can't get on welfare. And then basically he discourages people from having abortions because he said the more people out there who are out there in the country, the more of a labor force, but they also have power too because they got power of their feet. If somebody's not paying enough, they don't have to go work for that individual, or they can, not buy the products from those. So the power does rest in the consumer's hands, and people don't want to see that. They don't want to see that.
Yeah, I agree with most of what your friend said.
Yeah.
I would say that the unlimited immigration is not really. Well, anyway, he reversed himself by saying that, oh yes, they ought to have sponsors. So that's a limit on immigration. I would say that, but I would say that there's no problem with legal immigration. But the limit is they must have sponsors, at least one of the limits. And certainly they should. We've got to make sure that they're not here to kill us,
Yeah, and then people mock that. I mean, I can't understand. I mean, they've had family. The Boston bombers came from a bunch of people who came here not that long ago. They blew up stuff, killed people. Mm-hmm. So I mean, how come that's paranoid? That's a paranoid fantasy to believe that there's a threat out there. I don't understand that that viewpoint. I mean, to think there's a dangers in the world is considered you're a person wearing a tinfoil hat. I mean, I don't understand that.
Yeah,
it's more the demonstration.
That's silly. All you have to do is look what's happening in Europe, and you know immediately that's their intention to do it here, or some. All right, it's a minority. I believe it's a small minority of Muslims who participate in those kinds of things. But you don't have to read very far in the Quran or the Sharia law to realize that there's at least a tacit approval of that kind of behavior. Then you look at Muhammad's example himself. He was a warrior. That was his main job.
I see the old expression comes to my mind: the proof of the pudding's in the eating. And
that's right.
And I look at, okay, if we're such a god-awful, god-horrible people, then why are they coming to our countries and why aren't we going to theirs en masse?
That's
right. Except for military, But other than that, why aren't we? I mean, just basically, why do they want to come here? If they hate us so much, why? I don't go to places where I know I don't like the people. As simple as that.
That's right.
So, I mean,
That's right.
And I don't go, I go to some place, I'm not going to try to change them. I'm not. I mean, I'm going to say, hey, that's cool. I see the sights. I go back. I eat some food. I walk back. I get back home. I'm not going to try. I'm not there for trying to change your world. I'm really not. Anyway, we covered like the minimum wage, like I said, and now you're from an academic setting, and you have an idea of how we could. You think we should be able to privatize our colleges and universities, and how that happen?
I do. I think one of the reasons that that public schools are continuing to raise their tuition, even though they get tax money, is because it's part of the system. You tell students, oh yes, you can borrow this money, but you have to pay it back, of course, or you're supposed to pay it back. And of course, the schools say, "Oh, that's great." And the more money the students get through loans from taxpayers, the more money they get, the more they figure they can increase the cost of public education. More buildings, higher wages. Some of the wages for faculty, full-time faculty, are frankly unexcusable. They're too high. They're way too high. And how much does some faculty members actually do? Not very much. They might write books, but they don't teach. They have the teaching assistant. I was a teaching assistant when I was at Northwestern, so I know what that is.
Well, I know that some
paid almost nothing.
I know some professors, and
yes.
I'm being generous on this. When I was at U of M, besides their teaching and their office hours, their teaching time and their office hours, they probably put in 10, 15 hours a week. You know, I mean, and it was like, and especially in the areas like English department, I mean, they didn't have like a groundbreaking information coming to them. They had to change their lecture notes. They could pretty much keep their lecture notes from year to year, especially like the literature classes and the poetry and stuff. So I mean, and they worked 15 hours a week. And they're making 50, 60,000 a year or better, plus benefits.
Oh, a lot more than that.
Yeah, well,
more than that.
Actually, they don't get. At U of M Flint here, they didn't get paid a lot. They didn't get paid as much as they did at the colleges like just down the road there on south of us here and down there in Ann Arbor. Everything is almost every position you have. If you were holding that position down at U of M Ann Arbor, you're getting paid twice of what you get paid here. So I mean, that's like there's still an inequity there, and I shouldn't have brought that up. Now they're going to use that for a bludgeon.
Well, yeah, I was thinking of the wages that college professors get. I wasn't talking about high school teachers. But you're right. There's an inequity in high school teachers, too. You can teach in a high school in Novi or Northville, or some of the other schools around here, and you'll get paid considerably more than you'll get in a more rural area of the state of Michigan. And it's... Well, that's a very complicated question. I have some ideas, but that isn't really where I want to. Anyway, that's as far as I want to go now.
Yeah, but I'm saying at universities, there's actually a difference between the two universities within the same system of the pay. There is, there is a big difference. If it's Flint, people don't get paid as much as Ann Arbor. So anyway, you also are, as a true conservative, you're also very pro Second Amendment. And what do you feel about constitutional carry?
I think constitutional carry is the way we should go. In fact, it's the only sensible way, because constitutional carry is allowed in the Constitution. Why are there all sorts of registrations and all that sort of thing? Why do we have to pay a fee so we can exercise a constitutional right? There have been several attempts in the House to introduce bills. In fact, there's been several bills introduced, HB 4772 through 4778 those bills, 7 bills, were proposed in 2015. Another 4 have been proposed in 2016. So far in 2016, and they just sat there. They don't come to the floor. They've been proposed, but they don't come to the floor. And so I believe in constitutional carry. It's illegal to carry, whether it's open or concealed, and without government permit.
I agree.
The only limitation, I put a limitation on that. If you're a felon, have been tried and convicted of a violent felony, you've relinquished your right. So, but other than that, that's it.
Now we'll keep on with these hot topics because I mean it's like those are big issues for conservatives and liberals in the on the national level and also on the state level. Also, what is your position on legalization of marijuana in Michigan?
That's a kind of a difficult one. You remember, I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian. I believe that if you really damage young people's lives when you encourage legalization of marijuana, young people's brains aren't fully aren't fully functioned. I don't believe teenagers should be smoking tobacco, for that matter. If you know, some people will say, "Oh, well, you're against marijuana, but you're not against tobacco." No, I'm against tobacco for young people. You know, but you know, you shouldn't be thrown in jail as a felon. There should be some sort of something short of that, but no, I don't believe it should be legalized. Maybe decriminalized. Maybe that's the word we should use. But no, I just can't believe it. And for that matter, look, you say, well, if you're going to be a truck driver, overhaul truck driver, you can't take marijuana. You're tested. You lose your job. You know. But if it's legalized, I don't want people running around saying "que pasa," driving big trucks. You know, I just don't want that. Well, anyway.
No, I can see that too. I can see the point. I mean, but what I also have issue. I have some people. I've talked to some people who are so vehemently anti-marijuana, but they don't ever think about the fact there's people on there on Percocet, Darvocet, on OxyContin, Oxycodone, Vicodins.
Well,
those things are 3 times more 100 times more powerful. And
well, you got a point.
Yeah.
You got a point. I don't plan on introducing legislation in that area, but I just have severe reservations about legalizing any kind of drug like that. But, well, you know, I don't know. Well, anyway, on a moral ground, I have trouble with it.
Now you being a pastor, you and Christian duty is you're supposed to help the poor and the underprivileged. But what I think
That's
is
right.
what's in the papers a lot now within the news, because I can't really say papers, in the media a lot, is about the issue of sanctuary cities. I mean, are you for them? Are you against them?
You know, if a city wants to declare itself a sanctuary city, okay, they get no federal funds. They get no state funds. That's it. They're on their own. I'm absolutely opposed to sanctuary cities.
And you don't. And do you believe that? And obviously that you don't think the funds should be used for that. You know, state funds or federal funds should be used.
No
for
funds. No funds. No funds. They can run on their own. If Detroit wants to be a sanctuary city, let them wallow in their own destruction. But they don't get anything. They don't get anything from the state if they're going to be a sanctuary city. Flint wants to do it. No money. Grand Rapids, any of the cities.
I just don't see how we could afford this on our own. So I definitely think that would definitely discourage it, because right now we got and that's another thing. There's another convenient way of going to the side there. I'm in Flint. You're in southwest Oakland County, correct? That's where you're at.
Yes.
Okay, so you obviously have heard about the Flint water crisis. I mean, who would you put the blame on for that? Who would you say is responsible for that?
I think there's three groups. There's plenty of blame that go around, but there's 3 groups in particular. The city of Flint itself. When you have a city run by people who don't know economics, who don't know any kind of management. In other words, the Democrats. If you got a city run by Democrats for many, many years, you tend to have a city that's in poverty, a city that's not run well, that's open to all sorts of infrastructure disasters like the water system. So the city council of Flint has to take blame, a major portion of the blame. But there's also a great deal of blame to be put on the Department of Environmental Quality. Yeah, right. If they would quit bugging chicken farmers and pay attention to the real needs of our state when it comes to the environment, they would be a worthwhile organization. But they're bureaucracy. They're another bureaucracy that often gets tangled up in self-preservation instead of caring for the people. So a lot of the blame goes to DEQ, but I'm afraid that a great deal of blame goes to the way that Governor Snyder handles this job. Look, Mars Company. I have friends who worked in Mars in Virginia, and the leaders of Mars set forth a very strong pattern of leadership. The heads of Mars would go around to the various plants and ask the people who are working online, have any problems here, And then if they go to the management and find that the management was unaware of the problems that are online, that manager will often lose his job. That's the way the governor should operate. But no, he sits in Lansing, and he listens to his sycophants tell him everything's okay in Flint and the water supply. And then all of a sudden, when it gets too big to handle easily, he suddenly becomes aware of it. Well, that's not a leader. That's not a leader. I mean, not the kind of leader we need for Michigan. So I think you'll lose. I'm a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
I would support Snyder in almost every respect, but when he went too far in this, he should have known about the Flint water crisis as it was coming. In fact, there's a lot of areas in the state that has more fresh water than any place on earth, has water problems that are comparable to this kind of thing. And if you're going to be a leader, you go where the people are, you find out what's going on, and you take care of the problem. And Governor Snyder didn't do it.
So are you for the impeachment of Governor Snyder?
Yes, I am.
Oh, that's refreshing, because I've heard so many Republicans say they didn't think he did good enough, but then they'll circle the wagons and go back to this partisanship. It's like, but he shouldn't be impeached. Like, well, he did wrong. I mean, that's. I'm more of a conservative than I am. I can't say I'm a Republican. I mostly lean towards libertarianism, but I believe in accountability, and I think when a president follows up, I think Bill Clinton they were absolutely right to impeach him, and I thought they should remove him, not because he had the affair, but because he lied about everything and he suborned perjury from other people. That's not what the chief executive officer is supposed to do. You're not supposed to do that. And especially his role, is like, there's so many. It's just wrong at so many levels. And just to say that the Republicans are just a bunch of prudish old guys who didn't want to, because they didn't get none. That's the reason why they're going after Clinton. It was just bizarre, and in my opinion, asinine. Quite asinine to say that. But anyway,
you're right.
Yeah.
Clinton should have been removed from office, and Mrs. Clinton shouldn't even be running. But that goes beyond the state of Michigan. But she shouldn't even be allowed to run with her background. But anyway, what can you do?
So we're going to bring it back more to home here for you. Why are you critical of Kathy Crawford? Why do you think she's doing something wrong, or what is it?
Well, first of all, I'm critical of Kathy Crawford because she is not really leading us. She made a statement before her 2014 victory in the primaries. She made a statement when someone asked her. This is in the the Detroit Free Press article. She was asked what she would do about a certain issue. She said, "Well, I have to wait and find out what Governor Snyder has to say about it." Wait a minute. What happened to the separation of powers? The legislature is supposed to study things and make laws that make sense, not make laws that the governor initially approves of, or the governor tells them what to do concerning. But that's the way she operates. She is very passive, almost no leadership at all. She recently sent out a flyer to everybody in the district, which hailed her work with senior citizens. Hey, that's great. It's all past tense, however. She hasn't done anything.
Well,
and she doesn't do anything for the working person. She doesn't block legislation that her husband supported that he shouldn't have supported. She just kind of goes along, and then her office is not staffed on Mondays and Fridays, or most of Mondays and Fridays it isn't. And some of the staff members, they don't come in until late, even during Tuesday through Thursday when she's there, and that's understandable. The senators and representatives need to be in the home front too, but her staff members are supposed to come in on time. They're supposed to be from 9 to 5. We pay them full-time salaries for part-time work.
And very good pay. I mean, very good pay and benefits. So. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
Well, you see, you struck on something I think is a problem. I mean, I think this full-time legislature. I mean, I think basically we're just getting more time to actually get us into trouble. How do you feel about a part-time legislature? You know,
I lean that way. The only reservation I have about part-time, I'm supporting it. I would introduce a bill for part-time legislature. The only reservation I have in the back of my mind is, you know, is a part-time legislature an adequate balance against a full-time executive? Well, that's only theoretical because they're full-time now and they're not an adequate balance to the executive now.
Right.
I mean, the legislature it barely functions in our state. They make all these proposals, 900 proposals for crying out loud. They pass a whole bunch of them, but most of them are about minor things and really don't have much to do with much of anything.
Well, anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up with you today by asking you this one question. Do you support Donald Trump for president?
I certainly do.
Yeah.
I wish he were more theologically astute than he is. He's made some very foolish statements in theology, and I wish he weren't quite as rude as he is at times. But this man's a businessman. He's a successful businessman. He knows the difference between fair trade and unfair trade. He knows how to bring businesses alive. He knows how to encourage businesses. He knows how to create tax structures that make sense. And he's not afraid to stand up and say what he believes. Now, with the caveat of his sort of strange theology, he's not being hired to be a theologian. He's being hired to be the leader of the free world, and I think Trump can do it.
Well, anyway, you know, he's a controversial person. Like I just said something on Facebook, somebody's attacking him, and they're saying how bad he is. And I said, you know, and they say, well, it's okay if this one group, says this. They're just speaking his mind. They're making reference to Trump, but they're saying if somebody else, and they're making reference to Malcolm X, he says that it's considered hate speech. Well, and I said, where do you get this at? Trump is being trounced on by everybody. You know, I mean, and so, I mean, he's actually taking it. I mean, I don't see the major politicians, you know, the mainstream, the ready one, they would switch, they'd crumble like a stale cookie, you know, in opposition.
Yes, they do.
And he,
yes, they do.
And he stands up. I mean, you got to have somebody,
yes,
like they liked Ronald Reagan. Some people had issues with Ronald Reagan, but even his critics say he meant what he said, and he said what he meant, and he stuck with it. He was easy to figure out. He didn't have a hidden agenda. He stated it right outwards. So, I mean,
that's right.
And there's issues I had with myself. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Ronald Reagan. That goes against the grain a lot of Republicans, I know, but I simply just don't, you know, I belong to the fan club. But in retrospect, it's probably the last decent one I thought we had in our office. Because, I mean, I didn't want to go Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, to me, even as a kid, was incompetent and embarrassing. But anyway, that was my opinion even back then. So, but anyway, Dan, definitely like to encourage you when you're in the area to stop into the studio and we can talk and we can get you back on. And but I definitely wish you well. The vote is August 2nd, right, for your election here?
That's correct. So, August 2nd.
So,
yes.
And now
that's the primary.
Where can people reach you at?
Well, they can reach me through. They can watch me on YouTube. I'm creating a YouTube channel. It'll be up this week. They can now watch me on my website, Dan Lauffer, for state representative. They can communicate with me through email, Dan Lauffer, excuse me, Dan Lauffer 2014 at gmail.com. They can phone me at 248-842-4937. See, I'm on Twitter. I've got all the bases covered here, brother. I'm thoroughly modern. Think of that.
Yep.
But anyway.
So with the old-fashioned values, with a modern twist, you're really wired in. You know, you're in place for that. So, anyway, I'd like to thank you for your time there, and hope that you do well. You know, you win, and good luck there. And I'll be talking to you later. Okay.
Thank you. This has been a delight.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.